Does it make you a better version of yourself? Does it make you happier? Does it make you feel more fulfilled?
Yes.
I think like a lot of pressure that comes with like dating is because of this hypothetical the one that we all end up chasing.
Yes.
Whenever somebody decides that they're ready to kind of start dating, they need to kind of go in with one motive, right? That there will be a 1, but there'll also be a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5.
Dating, it can be so fun, but it can also be pretty tough out there. So many anxieties and questions arise. Are they going to text me back? Are they interested in me? How can I catch their eye? What do I even want from a relationship? These are all things that we ask ourselves when trying to navigate the dating scene. But if you're part of the queer community in India, in addition to these hopes and fears, you also end up facing a whole set of other challenges. We're going to get into all of that and more on this week's episode, so stay with us. Hey everyone, I'm Evelyn Sharma. Welcome to Love Matters, a love, dating and relationships podcast brought to you by DW and Indian Express.
Love matters. Love matters. Love matters. Love matters with Evelyn Sharma.
I'm so excited for today's show and our wonderful guest who's going to be giving us his tips and insights on all things queer dating and romance. Aniruddha Mahale. Welcome to the show, Aniruddha.
I'm so excited to be a part of this. This has been very cool, and I'm very, very excited about the kind of questions that you have for me. I hope that I can answer as many of them as possible because there are a lot of myths out there. So let's see if in case we can break as many of them and see what we can get out of it in the process.
Absolutely. But first, let me properly introduce you because you're somewhat of a Renaissance man, I feel. An architect, an influencer, and a writer. And last summer, your book was published, Get Out, The Gay Man's Guide to Coming Out and Going Out. A dating guide of sorts in which you recount your dating adventures and misadventures. But more on the book later. Aniruddha, you're our dating expert today. And I'm sure after this episode, our dear and queer listeners will find the one. But first, tell us, how would you describe your dating style?
My dating life has been currently very, very ambiguous because I've clearly not been reading my own book, right? It's just funny. I feel like, a lot of people always ask me, how can you be single if you've written a dating guide? Mm-hmm. But then I always think of it as one thing, right? If you're supposed to be an expert, you need to have the most unbiased approach towards things. And the moment you get into a relationship, you're going to have certain biases about finding romance. You're going to have certain biases about what a soulmate means to you.
Absolutely.
So for the sake of mankind, I have decided to stay single for the near future.
That is so selfless of you.
I try my bit. I do my bit to for the greater good of mankind.
Aniruddha, I used to be the kind of dater. Well, probably some people would say I was the romantic type of dater. And I always had that idea of one day finding the one and my one true love, the person I want to spend my life with. And even though I have found that person, I wish I had approached my dating life a bit different because I could have had so much more fun and I could have been so much more relaxed if I had gone into a lot of relationships without that idea of what if he's the one? Are we going to end up together forever? Are we going to have those children? And now that I have found this person, it was really by chance. We were set up on a blind date and suddenly we're like, wow, this could actually work. And a few years later, we're married with a baby. But yeah, what do you think? Should people chill out a bit more when they approach dating?
It's funny that you talk about the one, right? I think a lot of pressure that comes with dating is because of this hypothetical the one that we all end up chasing one way or the other, right? And because the idea of the one sounds like such an unreachable target, it also creates a lot of stress. And
True.
It creates a lot of pressure around it, right? Because the one is the holy grail of dating, right? It's once you reach the one, there's nothing else, right? Mm-hmm. But because of that, I think that's a double-edged sword right there. Because people chase the idea of the one so much, I think there's a lot of like self internalization that happens in the process, which means that people end up becoming nervous, they become anxious, they end up not becoming, they end up portraying versions of themselves that they feel are more perfect than the actual them.
Yeah.
So I think like whenever somebody decides to kind of like open up their dating pools, right? Whenever somebody decides that they're ready to kind of start dating, they need to kind of go in with one motive, right? That there will be a 1, but there'll also be a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5, right?
Yes, and there's so many different styles of dating. And we are also set on this one idea of the one that we have to find.
Right? I remember when I was a child, I was obsessed with the idea of finding like the one. Clearly it didn't work very, very well for me because here I am still single. But I think like I didn't know what he looked like. I knew that he was rich, he was handsome, and he was very famous. That's all that I knew. Okay. In my head, he looked like something like Ranbir Kapoor, but that was about it. But
That's it. No other details at
no
all.
other
Like,
details. No
just
other details.
that much.
Right? That's one criteria. But I think like as I continued growing up, I realized that like you know, like all of these like dreams and aspirations that we end up having about romance are always not very well founded, right? Because a lot of our ideas about romance and love come from the kind of movies that we watch or the books that we read or the shows that we see.
That's right.
It is very unfortunate, but like a lot of our ideas about modern love and romance come from the kind of content that we
Pop
consume,
culture.
right? From pop culture. And I think pop culture
That's
also
right.
works a certain way because it's made up, right?
That's right. It gives you a reason to dream, and we all love that.
I like, which is why, like, you know, I think I probably sound very cynical when I say this, but I think being more practical when it comes to kind of wanting to date is the more realistic way of like actually ending up with someone,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Because you don't just look at a person as a companion, then you end up looking at them as a friend, as a support
Yeah.
system,
Yeah.
and as so many other things, right? Which when we are romanticizing love, we don't like think about, right? Because everybody's like, oh, like my future like soulmate is going to be this, but there also have to be a lot of other banal things that we don't talk about. I think that is the beauty of it, like understanding that like love also needs to be very practical.
That's right. Yeah. Well, anyway, before we go any further, let's hear a little more about how LGBTQ people in India are finding romance.
Love matters.
One international survey found dating apps are twice as popular among the queer community compared to straight people. Some 73% of LGBTQ adults in India said they found online dating apps like Tinder and Grindr useful for finding love. They said these apps give them diverse options when it comes to dating, according to a Tinder survey. 80% of respondents felt dating apps had had a positive impact, saying they helped destigmatize being queer.
Well, for those who are still wondering what queer actually means, it's clearly the Q in LGBTQ. But Aniruddha, could you explain us what queer stands for exactly?
I think I don't know, like, you know, like, wow, this is strange because now suddenly been put in a spot. But whenever I've thought of the word queer, I've always thought of it as an all-encompassing term for the entire
Okay.
spectrum of anybody who might identify as not straight.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that makes
So
sense.
I think that is the easiest way to kind of explain the term queer. It's like an umbrella term.
So it's anyone who's maybe trans or gay or could be anything, but you can identify as queer just to kind of, sum it up.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Thank you so much to clear that up. Well, I recently read in an article where you said that conventional ways of finding love are non-existent for gay men and that you look for every app and opportunity that comes your way. What did you mean by that? Are apps the way to go? And what about, your old rom-com meet cute of touching hands in the library?
The rom-com meet cute of touching hands in the library like seldom happens in real life. I'll also explain why like dating apps are so like prevalent when you're a queer person, which is also like it's sad, but it's also like a fact that there are not enough queer safe spaces for queer people in this country.
Yeah.
Right? When you go to the Americas or when you go to Europe or when you go anywhere else in like any like predominantly white like populated country in this world, you see that there are like gay bars. There will be queer like spaces. There will
Right.
be libraries specifically dedicated to people who identify as queer. But India doesn't have any of these things, right? So the probability of me going to a bar and then running into somebody who I find very attractive, the probability of them turning out to be gay or bi are very, very low. Right? Like, I don't want to like see some like random straight man across the bar and he's just like makes eye contact with me. There is no guarantee that he's going to be gay himself, right? It's very awkward to then send a drink across and he's like, sorry man, I'm straight, bro. Which is just...
Well, it could be the other way around too.
But you never know, right? The probability of that happening is not a gamble that I would want to take when I'm like 5 like LIITs down, right?
Yeah, do you think that's why Grindr, for example, took off so well in India?
It did, because suddenly there was like an app on your phone which helped you keep your dating life discreet, right?
Yeah.
And only you had access to it. And at the same time, you opened up like a whole window of opportunities right there. Because there are like so many other men who are exactly like you who are also looking. And I think that like completely changed the way queer people found each other in India, right? Because suddenly now you know that the person you're talking to identifies or has the same preferences as you do. Really, like technology completely changed the way like romance is being dealt with in India.
Right. It's not just Grindr or Tinder. It's even social media. That I know so many people
like,
that met
so
over
many people,
Instagram.
Exactly. Like sliding into DMs is like one of the easiest things that you can do. I know people who found each other on LinkedIn. Okay. I know people who found each other through LinkedIn, which I think is like sad and beautiful at the same time, right?
I heard, I don't remember from who, I think it was one of our guests who said his mom thought that LinkedIn would be the best matchmaking website because everybody's got such a good resume on there.
Right? I think that makes a lot of sense because you can suddenly see where they've been working. You can see what kind of people they've been interacting with. And you can like make a decent guess at the kind of amount of money that they're raking in.
Yeah.
Which I think is fantastic because like that's beautiful.
Important part.
It can't get better than that, right?
That's right. That's right. So how else do you feel dating has evolved for gay men or queer people in general?
I think after parts of Section 377 got read down in 2018, a lot of the stigma that followed like homosexuality also kind of like dissolved away. I'm not saying that like things are hunky-dory and I can like walk out in like rainbow pants and not like be scared for my own safety. But I also live in Bombay, which is the biggest metropolitan city in the country, and I'm a gay man. So I'll give you like some context. Okay, the gay man is like the straight white male of the queer spectrum. Right?
Wait,
which means
what?
that
the gay man?
The gay man is like the straight white man, the straight white male of the queer spectrum. So he's the equal. The gay man is the equivalent of the straight white male
because he is the most known and accepted by this point, or
right. It's also like a lot of privilege, like male privilege, right?
True.
So
true.
As because we identify as men at the end of the day, I think that also kind of brings this like whole like truckloads of like privilege. So I feel like my experiences as a gay man will not be the same experiences of a trans woman or of like a bisexual woman or somebody who identifies as gender non-binary or gender fluid. Because like every queer person's like dating struggles and like ideas would be very, very unique to themselves. So when you look at dating, because I live in a city like Bombay, I feel like dating has generally been easy for me. It's also about how easy you make it for yourself.
Yes.
Ideally speaking. I mean, if in case you're not ready to date, then nobody who comes your way is going to seem like they're worth your time. Or you're not going to put in that much effort, right? I think the first ground rule of dating is to know that you're completely wholeheartedly ready for it.
Right.
Which a lot of people aren't, right? So
what are some ways to prepare for dating?
I don't know. I've always thought that you just need to when you know, right? It's like coming out. I mean, it's like being gay itself, right? Like, when you know. Nobody else can tell you otherwise. Nobody else can teach you otherwise. Like, you can read book after book on how to date. or like how to be the best boyfriend ever, or how to be the perfect partner, or the most like idealistic soulmate. But until and unless you're ready to take that dive, I don't think you can prepare for anything else that comes after. So the first step is half of the battle is won when you decide that you're ready for it.
Right.
I know it sounds very vague when I say it, but you just do, right? Like, I think when you're ready to kind of be in a relationship is when you would actually start taking it seriously. Is when you would actually start taking dating seriously.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And so how do you think dating has evolved in Bombay itself?
I think ever since 377 got pushed out, people have been a lot more proactive about their own like needs, like about their own romantic needs and like desires and like, you know, like and wants. So which is why like dating apps also saw like a massive surge in like people who were suddenly ready, because they thought that, okay, we've got this one giant thorn out of the way. And it was a great thorn.
And it was, just for everybody who doesn't know what exactly that means, I believe it was the part that was removed was criminalizing homosexual sex. And that was scrapped in 2018. And so I guess that's why a lot of people felt a lot more confident to say, I am gay. And now, not to go to jail basically for it.
You know, funny story is that there's a little nugget of information adding on to what you said. It wasn't just criminalizing gay sex. It was criminalizing everything apart from like regular like penis and vagina sex. Which means that,
really?
Yeah, which means everything else was illegal. So oral sex was illegal. And everything was illegal. So technically speaking, it was bad for all of us. It wasn't just bad for the gays. It was bad for all of us. So, yeah, I think so, which is why, right? Which is why you understand how regressive our government has been. But anyway, I think that once that got out of the way, it's also given a lot of people confidence to kind of put themselves out there.
Right.
Not just in the romantic specter, but also in terms of being out and proud, right?
Yes. And being happy and promiscuous if you want to be.
Whatever you want to be, you do you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But like if I go out on a date with a man, it's going to be the same kind of date that any of my straight girlfriends would do with like their partners, right? We would go for a movie, or we'd go like for dinner, or we would go for like to bar or drinks, or like go for a drive or something like that.
And you like before 2008, that was basically not even possible, would you say? Like
it was, but you know the thing is, it was also like I could go with a man on a date, but we could also pretend to be straight buddies, right?
True.
Because nobody thinks twice when like just two men are sitting at the table and like having like a cocktail or like a beer, right? But the confidence to be completely own who you are comes a lot easier now that three parts of 377 have been read down.
Yeah.
This is, but I mean, like, this is also for, like, it's not like society decided to change overnight and suddenly everybody was okay with homosexuality, right? Because bigots still exist. Like, you know, there'll always be homophobes out in the world.
What do you feel is still, like, one of the biggest misunderstanding about queer relationships? What are some of the biggest misconceptions?
I think a lot of people think that queer relationships don't last. And like, you know, they also think that it's a very frivolous concept, right? Like, it's always like, always heard things like nobody I know has ever said this to me, but I've heard like things in passing where people are like, oh, how can two men be in a relationship? Don't they both chasers? Like, you know, don't they both want sex? I mean, like, yeah, of course we do, but doesn't mean that like we don't want like anything else aside, right?
Yeah.
But also I think the length of the relationship is not like a measure of how successful it has been, right? I know a lot of people who are in unhappy marriages, but they continue to decide to be with their partners because the idea of being alone terrifies them. At the same time, I know people who've like had whirlwind romances of like a year or two, but they've counted them as the most wholesome like relationships of their life. So I think time being a measure of like how successful or how romantic your relationship was is also quite the myth, right? I think it's about what you get out of it and what you learned from it that is more important.
Right. Right. That's true. Yeah.
That's exclusive. That's inclusive of everyone. It's not just for like gay people or like it's across the borders, right? Straight, gay, bi,
Yeah.
anything. I think the point is about like how committed you feel to yourself when you're in a relationship. So that you don't feel like you're losing out on yourself, right? People always talk
That's very
about
good
commitment
advice,
towards other people, but I think the beauty of a relationship is about how committed it makes you to feel to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Does it make you a better version of yourself?
Yeah.
Does it make you happier? Like, does it make you feel more fulfilled? I think these are questions that people don't generally ask themselves.
That's right. When I got engaged, one of my friends who was in a marriage for 10 years and was just kind of on the way out of this marriage, she told me that, Evelyn, one thing you have to promise me is that you never ever forget who you are. Because very quickly when you're in a relationship, especially if you want this relationship to last, you make compromises, you kind of adjust a little bit, here and there. And 10 years later, you don't even know who you are anymore. And of course, that's no good for any relationship, and especially not the one that you have with yourself.
Right. No, exactly. I think that is very, like, what your friends are, like, made for like, really, really wholesome stuff, right? I think, like, once you crack that code, like, nothing else can come in your way.
Yeah.
And irrespective of your sexuality or, like, orientation or what you may or may not be looking for in a partner, I think the biggest relationship that you can work on at the current moment is the relationship that you have with yourself.
Yes. A therapist is always a good way to go too.
A therapist is a great way to do it. So my therapist gave me this very, very like crucial nugget of information about how I should like stop self-hating myself because it's not funny.
There you
She
go.
said, you think it's funny, but it's not. Nobody else is laughing, is it? I'm like, that is true. That is indeed very true.
Everybody else is just rolling their eyes.
Therapist
and,
lady, you
know.
said it. Okay, this is why I give you like buckets of money. But like, I'm completely on board. So if in case you got that jacuzzi in your house because of all the money that I've given you, I find it to be a very, very viable like transaction.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And now let's hear some more on queer dating. But before that, guys, also just a small reminder to send us your dating stories and questions. Our email is lovematters@dw.com.
Love matters.
In 2018, India scrapped colonial-era laws criminalising homosexual sex. In 2011, 12% of Indians surveyed said their city or area was a good place for gay people, compared to 53% today, according to a Gallup World poll. Still, despite these positive steps, in one survey by Tinder, around 40% of queer respondents said the biggest issue for them was social acceptance. LGBTQ people struggled most in northern parts of the country, they said.
Finding love and searching for connection is a basic human desire and something we all need. And we just heard about the growing acceptance, but unfortunately, there is still homophobia, transphobia, and so on out there. And we just briefly touched it. But how do you, as a queer identifying person, go about this when there are stigmas and potentially dangerous situations?
Like I told you, I think like I've also lived a very blessed life, right? I've been supported by a plethora of people who only loved me when I came out to them. So ever since I've come out, I've only like faced love, okay, which I've constantly overwhelmed by, and I think it's great because that's not the story for like a lot of people. So. Yeah. My ideas and my like conversations about safety when I like use a dating app might also come from like a very like higher point of like access that like a lot of people probably don't or unfortunately don't share. Because the thing is, as somebody very publicly out, I do not have to think twice about my safety when I'm going on a date, as opposed to somebody who might not be out of the closet.
Right. I mean, is dating for a queer person different to what your, cis heterosexual relationship looks like?
I think like it's about like how you perceive other people will see you, right? Now if in case like a cishet couple goes out on a date and they're holding hands, or if like, if they like, if one of them pecks the other one on the cheek, nobody is going to bat an eyelid. Right. At least, I mean, at least in the major metros, yes. Right? At least in the major metros.
Yeah.
Okay. But I know that I might be as self-aware and self-confident in my sexuality, but I know that if I am out on a date in a bar, I will still think twice before I hold another man's hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just about being safe, right? I think because like everybody's been bullied when they were children, I think like it triggers these kind of reactions about what if somebody like has a problem with it.
Right.
What if somebody says something? So I feel like when you go out on a date, you still have to live life not the way you would want to. But then again, I think that's not something that you as an individual can do something about. I think it's just about society like slowly coming to terms with like alternate sexuality, which is like alternate to heteronormativity, I meant.
So your main differences is because of society. It's not because of the human experience of dating.
Yeah. See, the human experience of dating is always that you do not want to end up with an asshole. Right?
Exactly.
So, right? And everyone's an asshole. So, like,
That's right. That brings me to my red flags. Tell me some of the red flags to look out for all of our dear and queer listeners right now. I mean, it's probably the same for all the straight people out there. But what are like some of your red flags?
I think major red flags, one of the biggest red flag is about somebody not talking to wait staff politely.
Right.
If somebody is rude to like service staff, like waiters or cab drivers or like, like valet attendants or like cashiers, then it instantly writes them off as being terrible people. Mm-hmm. Right? Because if the way you talk to somebody who do not think is an equal to you, speaks great volumes about the kind of person that you are inherently, right?
Yeah. What about someone who's very close to their mom?
I'm very close to my mom, but I don't know.
Yeah, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? I have had so many dating experiences where I'm just like, what?
The mom is interfering, then it's a red flag, right? If the relationship is very unhealthy in the terms that like it makes you a man child, then it's definitely a red flag. But if you speak to your mom like every day, if you tell her like about bits and pieces of your life from time to time, I think that's a healthy relationship to have.
Yeah, and I think especially when you want to, like, if you're looking to marry a man, I think the way he treats his mother is how he's gonna treat you.
I think the way he treats everybody. But yeah, like we also take our mothers for granted, right? So the way you treat your mother is the easiest way to kind of measure like how you would treat other people. Because nobody treats their mother with respect. Okay. We all are very rude to our mothers all the time. So,
Aniruddha, I'm a mother now.
Oh my God.
What will happen to me?
It's fine. Your child is going to love you to death. Do not worry about
it. That's right. That's right. Guys, if you want to read more about Aniruddha's interesting ups and downs of his own dating life, make sure to check out his book. It's called Get Out, The Gay Man's Guide to Coming Out and Going Out. Do you have any hopes? Do you have any hopes for acceptance for the LGBTQ community in India?
I think the only thing I want, and like I know that sounds really sad, but I want people to treat queer people the same way they treat like somebody else who might identify as heteronormative, right? So it should like the normalization should reach that extent that I can actually go to a bar and know that I will meet someone, that I should actually be able to go to a friend's wedding and know that I might like meet like a future boyfriend there.
Yes.
So I think that level of normalization needs to happen.
Absolutely. Well, Aniruddha, thank you so much for shining a light on queer dating in India for us today. And I really appreciate your openness and words of advice. I'm sure it has left our listeners more knowledgeable and inspired. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
This was lovely. I just saw the time and I realized that we've been talking for about an hour. For all this while, I thought like we've been talking for about 20 minutes. Okay, so...
Absolutely. We could talk about so many more things.
Right. This is fantastic. Okay, like I was very nervous at the first half of today because I was like, oh, what if I like don't know what to say?
Aww.
But you made me feel very, very comfortable in your podcast. So thank you for that.
Thank
Means
you.
the world to me. This is a lot of fun.
And that's a wrap on today's show. But guys, make sure to send us an email if you've got topics on your heart you'd love to hear more about. Our email is lovematters@dw.com, and all feedback is welcome too. Until next time, I'm Evelyn Sharma, and I think love matters.
Love matters. Love matters. Love